when we were young and rugged to old and buggered, mate. That's how we are now. My name's Joe Johnson, and I had the privilege to join North Caloundra Surf Club in about 1950, Christmas time 50. My introduction to the club was 3 blokes with blazers come over the hill, and they were Warren Sheehan, Howard Smith and Brian O'Connor, Bock O'Connor. And we got talking there, and they said, why don't you come over and join the surf club, you know? And I didn't want to go back to Brisbane. You know, I love the surfing and carrying on.
My name is Doug Bolton. I joined the North Caloundra Club in the 1957-58 season. My parents used to take us all down to Burleigh Heads for holidays, and I well recall one year down there we were having a swim and some man got into trouble and got carried out in a rip, and my dad swam out and held him up until the lifesavers came and got him, and I think that instilled in me the necessity to become a lifesaver to save people.
That was our original costumes, which had, we've had not only a change of name, but we had a change of emblems. Our first emblem was which you've probably seen photos of here, was a albatross and crossed a spear and a paddle. The albatross being the reason was there was a lot of Air Force guys, cadets, joined up in the club. Anyway, we thought that later on that it was more of a surf club then, of people of all different kinds and makes, and so we decided to change the emblem to one of the real.
There was never more than 24 members in the club. We cooked our own meals, made our own beds, we swept our own clubhouse and so forth. It was a very grassroots type of situation that we were in.
We had the old surf club in those days, which was down on the outside of the old governor's house, which was well known. It was very secluded. You could do anything you liked there, bang, and no one was around you in the public and everything like that. And it was a great place to live.
Sleeping quarters were here. I always slept about there. That was my bed just there. And up here was the shark lookout and also where they had the radio announcers. Unfortunately, this one got burnt down. And there's plenty of stories about the truth of that, but all I know was it was an accident and got burnt down.
I shouldn't say this. I decided to burn the clubhouse down. Not that I had anything to do with the eventual fire that destroyed it, nothing whatsoever. So seeing I was the only one in the clubhouse and it was raining cats and dogs, I went down into the kitchen, got every paper or cardboard carton I could find, stuck it on top of the gas stove, lit the gas stove, jumped into my car and I remember, yes, I got as far as Strathpine where it was flooded. Anyway, I got up the next morning and put the radio on bright and early to hear the news, and nothing about a fire in Caloundra, nothing. As it turned out, we found out the next weekend, all the cardboard boxes and paper bags that I had on there didn't catch a light. So, nothing to do with me, that fire that burned it down, nothing to do with me.
I think the biggest thing that we ever did here was run the state titles here at Dicky Beach, and I was the president or the captain at that time. All the blokes from around the state were swimming, and they had these state titles on the Sunday, and these blokes came out to swim, and it was a big sea here, and I took a few blokes out. There's a bloke called Coco Carilla from Ingham. Anyway, some of these blokes couldn't even get out in the surf. Quite amazing. And they decided to get a bloke from Burleigh to sweep the double-ender boat, which he wanted, and 4 blokes from Metropolitan Caloundra manned the oars, and this bloke demanded a bottle of rum. And he had half a bottle before he went out to lay the buoys, and he took this boat out, and these 4 boys from Mets came back in, and they had no water in the boat, and it was quite amazing. And they came in, had their breakfast. This bloke took the other half bottle of rum, went out for the race, and they cancelled it because there's a bloke called Steve Wilkes came in at Carramundi Lake because of the waves and the sweep, whereas he kept trying to get to the boys, which was straight out there, but he missed them.
We did have a few rescues, and I was involved in a few of those. So I fulfilled what I had learnt from my father in rescuing somebody, and I was able to do that by rescuing people here.
We had a mass rescue, but you wouldn't think it. You obviously think it'd be on the beach, but no. It was halfway between the Caloundra turnoff and Landsborough. It was really pouring down rain, really cyclonic, this late January. Anyway, all the women and kids got on the bus, and they were going back to take the bus from Caloundra to Landsborough, catch the train back to Brisbane. Anyway, we got on the bus, and anyway, halfway through, the buses stalled, 3 buses stalled. So, and the next thing, the water's come up over the tyres into the seats were floating. And of course there's women panicking, blokes panicking, and so we changed into our togs, went out and pushed the buses back.
And the first surf boat that we decided to build, or have built, was a boat builder who had come up from Caves Beach. His name was Claude Boyd, and he became the boat builder in the town in those days. And he was just a perfectionist, absolute perfectionist. He was a brilliant tradesperson. And we said, would you build a surf boat? He said, yes. He had built many of them because he was involved in surf clubs down in New South Wales. And he struck the keel for the surf boat in the boat shed that we had only just built. And I'm not sure whether television was in those days or what, but we saw an article on television or heard it on radio that the surf boat was being built in Sydney, and that they had changed the actual scheme of surf boats. And what they had in those days, every surf boat was called a double ender. All right? So in other words, it had a point at the front and a point at the back. And then they decided that they would make a surf boat with a tuck stern. And now a tuck stern is one with a flat back and a pointed end. And so we went tearing down to the clubhouse as soon as we got here this particular day. And we said, Claude, stop building. And we said, is it possible to make our surf boat into a tuck stern? And he sort of scratched his head and he thought, my God, he says, I've already got the keel set as a double ender. And we said, well, that's what they're doing now. They're making them as a tuck stern. We want a tuck stern. And he said, all right, I said, but instead of the boat being 24 feet long, it's only going to be 22 feet long. And so we had the shortest surf boat on the Sunshine Coast because he changed the keel to make it into a tuck stern.
He hauls up to the boat shed, pulls the boat out, and a mixture of crews, male and female, and there's only 5 fit in a boat. So, we were going great. We did crack a few chutes, and we thought, we better put the boat away. So we beached the boat, and we carried it, which we thought was the clubhouse. Anyway, that went all right. Anyway, Dawn Patrol, Cliff Crawn, the captain, came down next morning and he said, I've got a small thing for you gentlemen to do. And we said, what? He said, it's only small. He said, I'll show you. He said, what is it going to do? He says, put the boat away. And we looked at each other and we said, put the boat away? He said, yeah. Oh. So we walked over one sand hill And we walked over to the second one, and there she was in the glory of the boat.
We built a stage, a disposable stage in the boat shed, and used to take it over. The block of land over there is still vacant, and that's the block of land where the people sat, and we had a stage down the bottom. There was no road, and there was just dirt and everything there. And I remember Joe and I used to rehearse in the clubhouse here, and we sang the Harry Belafonte song, that day, oh, sunlight come and you gotta go home, or something like that. And everybody booed and carried on. They said, get them off, you know. So it was quite funny.
As soon as I finished work, we used to catch the tram out to Chermside Terminus, and it could be anywhere from 2 hours to 6 or all night to get into Caloundra at different times depending on the traffic.
At the Chermside tram terminus there was Met Caloundra, there was North Caloundra, there was Mooloolaba, Alexandra Headlands and Maroochydore, and there would be a group of guys out there hitchhiking, and so we had to hitchhike up to the coast each Friday evening or Saturday morning, depending entirely on when you chose to come up. But that was there would have only been 2 fellows in the club that actually had a vehicle, and fortunately I was one that did have a vehicle in the very early days, but it was a 1934 Morris Cowley, and I think the guys would rather hitchhike rather than come with me in the old Morris Cowley.
And one particular guy used to bring up his pillow, and I'd make sure I got in before he did it on Saturday night, and I'd grab his pillow and he'd come in and he'd be scratching around looking for his pillow, and I'd be rolled over with the pillow between my knees, and after he'd gone to bed I'd pull it out and I'd use his pillow, and of course in the morning I'd wake up first and I'd throw the pillow down at the head of his bed so that he had no idea how it got there in the morning, and I used to do that just about every weekend, and he never worked it out who it was.
Most of my misadventures happened coming back from the pub. This particular time, a mate of mine, Pat Marnie, his nickname was A1, and he and I bought a car. I think it was a 31 Morris Minor, and we painted it red and yellow, and and we brought it up here very proudly, and we used to drive the blokes, anyone who wanted to live uptown or wherever, we'd drive them, you know. And we were at the pub, it was in the afternoon, and then time to come home. We all jumped aboard. I reckon we had at least 8 blokes in the car. Came over the top there, going down into Moffat Beach. And in those days, there wasn't the extra road built that goes around. You went to the top of the hill and then came down. Anyway, we were coming down the hill, and with the weight, the brakes wouldn't hold. So Pat tried to stop it on the gears, and so we busted a crown wheel and pinion, and we just took off straight down this hill. He drove it straight through, past the shops that are still there, and around onto the beach, and we ran right onto the beach, and eventually pulled up, and couldn't go any further. So eventually we got someone that came, and they towed it round to the clubhouse, and it stood there at the clubhouse outside for about 6 months. And we'd come up and we'd start it up and sit in the car, rev the motor, and anyway, eventually we sold it for $10, I think.
We went over to the pub that was just near the surf club, just across the road virtually, and we continued to drink on there. The police arrived there and told us we were all drinking too much and making too much noise, and I thought, well, I'll go home. I'm sick of staying here. It's time to go home. And I had the surf reels. I had a ute at the time, and I had 2 surf reels in the back of the ute in the march past gear. And I left, and I drove straight across the island. The bridge had just been built not long before that period, and I drove straight across the island, and in line with the road there was a jetty looking straight, and I always thought that was the bridge. And I drove straight onto that jetty, and over the end of it I went in the ute, and it sank in about 35 metres of water or more, and as it sank it rolled, and it allowed me, luckily, get out of one of the windows and rise to the top, which I didn't think I'd make at one stage. And when I got to the top, there was a fellow on the jetty, and he said, there he is there. An ambulance arrived there, and he treated me for a little cut on my head. And I told the ambulance fellow to take me back to the surf club, which he did. The march past gear disappeared. We got one reel back, and that was that. And the car's still there, the ute's still there in the Bobby Passage.
At this party, I remember this as plain as day, we had a fellow called Alan Wilson. Somebody took an empty beer glass and passed water into it, peed into it in other words, and stuck it up on the refrigerator. Then we went out in the backyard to bring Alan Wilson back inside to have a farewell drink for Mick before he left for New Guinea, and I can still see Alan. He took this glass off the refrigerator, opened his mouth and straight down the hatch all it went. He never batted an eyelid. He was that drunk he wouldn't have known that he was drinking dead set piss.
When we went to go to the pub, if it was raining, we were all too bloody mean to catch a cab. So somebody came up with the idea that let's ring up Hensel's Real Estate. Okay, so we ring them up. Listen, we're interested in buying a block of land. And he said, yeah, righto, boys, I'll come around. He picked us up, 5 of us up, and showed us all this land. Excuse me. And everyone said, nah, you're too bloody dear, just drop us at the pub. So, okay, he done that. After the third time, he said, I've had enough of you bees. He said, I will wake up, £2 deposit, £2 a month, £30 for a block of land. I had a guilty conscience, or it was the smartest thing I ever did. I bought 2 blocks of land, and I'm still living on one. I built on one, sold the other one for quite a lot of money eventually. So that's how a guilty conscience, I think it was, beat me. And I still swim with a lot of my friends that we call ourselves the Pods, and we still go for surf every day. We've been doing that for about 25 years. So our friendship has really has come on to from when we were 17, but we're still good friends. I don't think I've ever had an argument with any of them in that time.